Hello, welcome to my very first webcast. What was the American Renaissance? In fact, what does the word Renaissance mean? The simple definition of the French word itself is rebirth. Outside of that, we consider the primary Renaissance period to be the period of European history at the close of the Middle Ages, which gave rise to the modern world. A cultural rebirth from the 14th through the middle of the 17th centuries, according to most dictionary definitions. Yet the word is used for many other periods of rebirth. The American Renaissance, for example, took place in the late 1800s through the early 1900s. Other uses of the word continue to describe a variety of rebirth periods throughout literature, music, and art, and will no doubt continue to be used to describe the evolution of the arts through time. Within the American Renaissance, I have selected for analysis Nathaniel Hawthorne, Harriet Beecher Stowe, and Herman Melville. It was difficult to select just three from this exciting period of our literary history. Most of us studied all three in high school and college. Hawthorne's most famous works, such as The Scarlet Letter and The House of Seven Gables, Harriet Beecher Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin, Dread, A Tale of the Great Dismal Swamp, and other anti-slavery works, and Melville's Moby Dick and Billy Budd are just a few examples. So how did the period's culture, politics, and religion shape the American Renaissance and the three authors I selected? First, Hawthorne's look at morals and judgment in The Scarlet Letter encompasses all three concepts. The culture of the period was all about family, hard work, and hardships. No time for fooling around. Women were subjugated by men, and strict adherence to religious ideology was primary to most Americans. Hawthorne's Hester Prynne not only had an affair resulting in the birth of a daughter, but it was an affair with a man of the cloth. At first, her cultural peers looked down on her, but eventually the women of the community came to see her for the woman she was, kind, compassionate, and worthy of forgiveness. Stowe's Uncle Tom's Cabin took a harsh look at slavery, and rightly so. Slavery and Christianity, in her view, were incompatible, and Stowe wanted the world to understand that. Though her work has been criticized and adored, it stands the test of time. Modern readers continue to analyze the pros and cons of the work, and in particular Uncle Tom. Melville's Moby Dick delves into the individual's battle with personal demons. During the American Renaissance, literature was opening up to the individual as the primary entity and moving away from groups. This made inner exploration of self compared to one's community, including religion, a difficult transition. Many of us have whales in our lives, forces we cannot overcome, yet we do not give up, and eventually we can lose everything if we are not careful with how we handle our anxieties. Close attention to our actions and behaviors is primary to the transcendentalist. There are religious connotations and cultural undertones with Ahab's burning desire to kill the whale. It does not end well. Which brings me to the question, what role did transcendentalism play in American Renaissance? Again, looking first at the definition of a word helps us move toward an understanding. It is actually a relatively simple concept. The word simply describes a philosophical and social movement that developed around 1836. It stated that religion permeated all nature and humanity and did not promote self. It was led by such writers as Ralph Waldo Emerson and Henry David Thoreau, central figures in the movement. However, we can see transcendentalism in Hawthorne, Stowe, and Melville. Hawthorne's Hester Prynne did not voluntarily move toward an individualistic life, but once forced there, she developed her own sense of self, and by doing so served her community. Stowe's Uncle Tom seems overly passive to today's readers, and perhaps to readers at the time, but he was a devout man following a path he had little control over. He certainly could be seen as a type of transcendentalist by sticking to his core values and spreading goodwill wherever he went, despite his lot in life. Melville's Ahab, perhaps the most complex of the three characters, certainly followed his own confused moral code. Strong-willed and perhaps what we might call today bipolar, he nonetheless portrayed many of the characteristics of a transcendentalist insofar as he was determined to find his own way and follow his quest, no matter how irrational it was. Sometimes a strong individual becomes misguided in an effort to reach an unrealistic goal. Constant review of our methodology is crucial. Finally, taking a look at other writings of the period, we can ask, what was the special role of poetry in the American Renaissance? First, poetry is often considered the most difficult to comprehend of all writing. Effort is necessary to understand the great epic poems and to apply what we learn from the poems to our lives. Transcendentalists were particularly fond of poem as expressive ways to explore feelings, emotions, religion, and other societal issues. Religion had long been a primary topic in writing, but the focus moved. Many turned to individual spirituality rather than organized religions. Writers began writing about the bond between humans and nature, and away from what they perceived as the corruptions of society. The American Renaissance opened minds and encouraged free will and expression like never before. Society was encouraged to explore life without worrying about the consequences of making mistakes or offending God. It was our period of enlightenment. Ironically, we have since moved closer and closer to religious, political, and societal fanaticism. Writers from the American Renaissance would warn us to remain true to our individualism and avoid mass intolerance. Thank you.